What's up, you spooky mother lovers? So, this is going to be episode one. And I think this is the perfect starting point to talk about Thursday night's investigation with the 5FM Breakfast Crew. So, on Thursday night, I took the 5FM Breakfast Crew to West Park Cemetery in Johannesburg. And now, West Park Cemetery is a very interesting location. There's some very extremely old graves there. And there are also some graves of people that we choose to not sort of go anywhere near because of their political status and stuff like that. So we decided to go to the older side of West Park Cemetery. And I had Nick Hamman, who is the main host of the Morning Breakfast Show on 5FM, and Marley, who is also on the Morning Breakfast Show, and Ayub, who is the producer. Now, when we got there, I explained to them that, listen, ghost hunting and the paranormal investigating is quite an interesting thing in the way that you cannot just expect to get response. That doesn't just happen. You don't just get response during a paranormal investigation. And unfortunately, our time was very short for the investigation. We didn't have a lot of time to actually investigate, which was quite sad if I think about it right now. But, you know, the fact that Nick and Marley had quite substantial and tangible and relevant communication was absolutely incredible. And obviously, after they left, we decided to stay on a little bit longer and still investigate. And some crazy things actually happened after they had left. So in the beginning, we got there and we went to an older section of West Park Cemetery, and we walked around with the crew. And I let them walk off on their own and played a little bit of a trick on them. I blew an Aztec death whistle. Now, an Aztec death whistle is something that is quite an interesting little piece of memorabilia history. An Aztec death whistle was used during the time of the Aztecs and the Mayans, and it was used as a way of sort of allowing the spirits of the sacrificed humans to get taken into the afterlife. Now, obviously, for them, it was quite a great honor to be sacrificed for their gods. So they would usually blow the Aztec death whistle as a way of allowing their soul after the sacrifice to move on to the next life. And as well as the Aztec death whistle was used in the war and the battles and stuff like that. Now you can imagine an Aztec death whistle is quite a scary thing to hear on its own. Imagine 100 of them blowing all at the same time. I'm pretty sure the enemy was extremely, extremely scared after that little ordeal. So anyway, they went walking off, and I decided to blow the whistle and give them a little bit of a fright. You know, break the ice a little bit, as it were. And they did jump and get a little bit of a scream and a poop out, which was fantastic, because I think that allowed them to sort of relax a little bit and to actually get into the paranormal investigation. We then moved over to the one grave where Nick was holding the EMF detector, and he got some response on the EMF detector. It went off, and he told me about it, and so we moved everything over to there and we started the investigation. And we seemed to be having some communication with Katarina, who was possibly still roaming around at unrest. She wasn't at rest. And after that little bit of communication, I decided maybe Nick would be the perfect guinea pig to put under the Estes method. Now, the Estes method is sensory deprivation, meaning you are cutting off two of your main senses. You are cutting off your hearing of the outside world, and you are cutting off your vision. So you are completely isolated, as it were, in the sense of your visual and auditory cues are now cut off. You become a conduit. So what you'll usually have is you'll have earphones or headphones in with a blindfold on, meaning that you cannot hear the questions that me as a paranormal investigator would be asking, or anybody else would be asking for that matter. You are only hearing the responses of the device you are listening to. And this allows you to sort of open up your senses to responses that you wouldn't usually hear just listening to SB7 Spirit Box or the Necrophonic or whatever app you're using when you are under the S-test method, or just sort of going around and listening to a device that might be in your hand. So Nick went under and he seemed to have some relevant response. And one of the tangible responses that we got was that it seemed like either Katarina or one of the other spirits actually sat down next to him on the headstone that he was sitting on, which was quite interesting for the fact that we were getting relevant, intelligent communication. Plus, we had the response on the cat ball, meaning that there wasn't just an auditory response, but there was a physical response as well to the spirit being there. And for me, that is two things that make it a very plausible fact of the paranormal being present. Once we had done that, Nick came out of that. He said that it was a very interesting experience. He was very, open to finding out more about the paranormal. And we kept on walking around, and we kind of relaxed a little bit. Obviously it's a new group of people. And with a paranormal investigation, it's usually supposed to take maybe 3 to 4 hours before you actually start getting into the energy of the paranormal investigation. We only had about an hour. So it was a very speed run example of a paranormal investigation. We moved around a bit. We had some movement. We had some response on the necrophonic. And then we sort of gathered into another spot that we got led to by one of the responses that we received on the necrophonic. And Marley seemed to have a very tangible response with a young girl named Sasha, which is quite interesting, because I think for this part where the response of the footstep behind Marley and then the response of the necrophonic just shows that she was obviously giving off an energy that the spirit felt comfortable with. And she had a very relevant response, very tangible, real response to her, where she felt very connected to Sasha, who was, obviously communicating with her. In this scenario, I would have said that we need to stick around a little bit more, maybe put Marley under an Estes and see if we can get more clear communication from the spirit that was around at the time. Unfortunately, we had to pretty much end it after that. And the 5FM crew left, and we stayed to investigate. And we did some investigating, some shit talking, some joking, some ghosties tickling pickles and stuff like that. And we came to another gravestone where I put a few pieces of equipment on the gravestone. I put an EMF detector, a torch, and a cat ball. And Montana, who was there with Zander, who was our protection for the night, he was our armed escort, she was standing right next to the gravestone. And the wind started to pick up quite weirdly in a direction that didn't make sense to the response that we had next, with the equipment actually being thrown off of the gravestone. And for me, this was kind of debunkable in the sense that it could possibly have been wind. But at the same time, we tested this theory. I put the devices back on and started to note which direction the wind was actually blowing in. And the direction the wind was blowing in was towards us. The wind was blowing this direction, and the devices were going that direction. So it, to me, seems that we were having quite a violent response to the equipment and to the questioning that was happening at that time. This happened a second time. And so I decided, you know what? 3 times the charm. Let me put the equipment back on, we reset, and we try again. And this time, the devices fell off. The torch and the cat ball, notably. The EMF detector didn't really move, which kind of proved to me that it wasn't the wind because the EMF detector has got quite a big backing to it. So if it was the wind blowing it, the EMF detector would have also fallen off or blown over, and it wasn't very stable the way the EMF detector was sitting on the gravestone. So for me, this was one of the most amazing and real experiences I've had where an object actually got moved 3 times after we asked the object or the spirit to move the object. Once we had done that, we decided to put Montana under the Estes, and we had some relevant response to that. And then I went under the Estes, and we had some more relevant response. And just before I was setting up to get myself under the Estes, Zander and Michaela, who were there, saw what looked like a figure standing in the middle of the road, which was weird because I wasn't paying attention to it, and Montana had just come out of her Estes, so she was kind of, a little bit disorientated. And stood up, went to go and take a look. I didn't see anything physically because obviously it had moved by the time I got up to take a look. But Michaela and Zander both saw a figure down the road, which is quite a plausible thing because 2 people were seeing it and 2 people were seeing the same thing at the same time. Anyway, went under the Estes, just happened to be a full moon as well that night, which was great. The full moon does sort of account for a lot of energy that can be used in the paranormal. But this is something that I've been testing for a while. Does the full moon increase the paranormal activity or does it decrease the paranormal activity? And I've had very mixed responses with this. Of the many times I've been to Kempton Park Hospital, I'd say about 10% of those times I've gone on a full moon, and the response at the hospital hasn't been as crazy or real as when it wasn't a full moon. It seemed to me that the light of the moon actually causes the paranormal to kind of die down a little bit. And I don't know if that's because of the gravitational forces of the moon, the change in the energy of the moon being directly overhead, um, and vice versa. When we were at the hospital, when at Kempton Park Hospital, and it wasn't a full moon and it was pitch black where you cannot see your hand in front of your face, the response and the happenings around that were noted as paranormal were quite intense. The voices, the footsteps, the responses on the equipment, the communication via the necrophonic or the spirit box devices. So this was something that I kind of have got just in the back of my mind. Does the moon affect the level of paranormal activity? And with the fact that this night was so active with the paranormal in terms of the equipment being pretty much thrown off of the gravestone, the response that Nick Hamman had, the response that Marley had, and the communication we had via the Estes method, I am leaning more towards plausible that the moon did contribute a lot to the free movement of the energy of the spirits that might have been at unrest at West Park Cemetery. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to put that live up soon, a little bit after this one, and then you will be able to actually go and enjoy the journey. Obviously, it's the investigation, it's the bantering, it's the talking, it's the shit stirring, it's all of that, all coupled into one. So you'll be able to see how things progressed, from the ice breaking, from the joking, from the investigating. And you'll be able to kind of, in your own mind, determine what you think was relevant paranormal response, what was relevant to the investigation, and what was just a bunch of bullshit. And, at the end of the day, that's what I want. I want you guys to look at my videos, especially the lives, and to tell me, listen, this is my theory. I think maybe it was just the wind, or I think maybe it was just the way that the gravestone was sitting. Maybe it was not level or whatever like that. So I'm very open to your comments. Remember to comment down below your theories and thoughts on the investigation if you were part of the live, or comment your thoughts and theories on the actual live investigation when I do put it up. Guys, I love you. You are awesome. You are why I do this. You are the passion. Don't forget to like, share, follow, subscribe, tell your auntie, tell your mom. Watch it in the dark. Don't watch it in the dark. Don't be a doers. Be a doers. Be lekker. It's better to be lekker. Don't be a doers. Be lekker. See you guys next time.